Love between husband and wife, is that important?
Sure it is. And it's greatly important as far as I'm concerned. I love my folks.
I would rather be in hell with everybody else than in heaven with them.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today I'll be talking about one of the most secretive and controversial groups in the Mormon fundamentalist movement, the Kingston group, and its current leader, Paul Elden Kingston. The group is also known as Davis County Cooperative Society, and the community was actually founded a few generations back. Paul's grandfather, Charles W. Kingston, a member of the mainstream LDS Church, was a fierce advocate for the principle of plural marriage. By 1928, he had lost his patience with what he saw as a dilution of the true faith. He began to preach openly in favor of plural marriage and even co-authored a book on the subject, giving the LDS Church little choice but to excommunicate him in 1929. Charles would take more of a supporting role as the family moved to Bountiful, Utah in 1935, along with several followers who agreed with their stance on plural marriage. His son, Charles Elden, known as Elden, established the Davis County Cooperative Society in 1941, and it was managed as a united order, a governing system laid out by the Doctrines and Covenants scriptural doctrine, which had been written by Joseph Smith. Elden ran the group until his premature death in 1948, when his brother, John Ortel, took over as the trustee in trust and spiritual leader. It was John Ortel, known as Ortel, who established the group's official church, known as the Latter-day Church of Christ, in 1977. Ortel had at least 13 wives and many children when he died in 1987. One of his sons, Paul Elden Kingston, took over the group and is still the leader to the present day. Paul Elden Kingston was born on the 17th of December, 1959. He is said to have as many as 40 wives and nearly 300 children. One of his older children, Nicole Maffey, has since left the group. She wrote a book about her experiences called The Leader's Daughter, and she has spoken out publicly about the practices and abuses that she witnessed. She has done interviews on the program What Love Is This? And openly discussed the family dynamics and religious beliefs from which she eventually fled. During her first appearance, she was accompanied by another young woman from the group, Jessica Christensen. The Kingston group is notorious for their secretive and often criminal behavior. Nicole and Jessica admit that the men do not support their enormous families and that most of the women receive government assistance.
They teach you that as soon as you have your first baby, if you can, go get on welfare.
Yes.
That is the first thing they teach you. And that is, in fact, most of the girls, 16, 17, 18, they will go there and claim they don't know who their baby's daddy is, and they will all go get on welfare. In fact,
The group also has some very strange views on race.
How you're being punished. The other thing they teach you is that LaDonna, which was Ortel's wife, so she put this, she had this dream, which is how they get all their visionaries or how God speaks to them. So she had this dream that anybody who leaves is going to have black blood. They really care about the blood. So if you leave, you're somehow black blood's going to come in your family. Like you're going to marry it, you're going to have black children. And the sad thing is, a lot of people have, but what's wrong with that? There's
Members who have left recount stories of terrible abuse, all done under the banner of spare the rod, spoil the child. Paul and his wives may have taken these biblical verses to the extreme, as Nicole explains.
I was 6 years old, and I stole some candy from my teacher in first grade. And maybe it was 7. It was in first grade. My dad, I remember my mom took me to my dad, and my dad said, we'll go get a wooden spoon because she needs a spanking or whatever. My mom came back with a piece of a bed, like just a metal bar, the L-shaped bars that you hook really old beds together. There was rust on it. And she came back and brought this to my dad. And I was like, and I look at my mom like, really? Like, you're going to let him beat me with this? Like, you're going to bring this to him? And he beat me with it. And in fact, that was the moment where I was like, I hate my dad. I never hated, and I hated my mom for a long time for that as well.
But perhaps worst of all is the accounts of incest and inappropriate behavior between older men and younger girls. If you would rather not hear the specifics of the very worst parts of this story, skip to 5 minutes and 34 seconds. I think you can get the gist of it without the specifics, so please put your mental health first. Jessica recalls having to be cautious around her father and his family.
Now, my dad, I was really careful to keep boundaries with even his brothers. You would think that in a normal life, like, that's my dad, and those are his brothers.
I don't have
That's
to worry about
never
them
going to
coming on to
happen.
me.
But in the order, that's who you marry. You marry your father's brothers. And so it's
Some
like,
former members talk about children with birth defects due to incest, as well as women who died due to not receiving adequate medical care in childbirth. There are also tales of babies with birth defects who were taken away by the fathers and allowed to die rather than being taken to a doctor. Of course, these are all just allegations. Those within the group claim that none of these stories are true. Okay, yes, they admit that sometimes incestuous marriages happen. And okay, yeah, some of the men have dozens of wives and hundreds of children. And sure, it isn't uncommon for girls to be married in their teens, but they're technically following the law if they have parental consent. It's all just consenting adults, or, the children of consenting adults, so it's fine.
Do I detect a note of sarcasm?
Are you kidding me? This baby is off the charts. Why?
Oh, a sarcasm detector. Oh, that's a really useful invention.
With all of that said, I am going to place Paul Kingston right here. Members who have left the group talk about how difficult it was for them to adjust to ordinary society, and I think that speaks to the group's high level of control, especially over the young women. Our next subject was originally a member of the FLDS, which has a branch in Bountiful, British Columbia, not to be mistaken with the Bountiful from the earlier part of our video. Winston was born on August 25th, 1956, to parents Ray and Anna Mae Blackmore. Anna Mae was the first of Ray's 6 wives, and Winston was the 9th of her 13 children. Winston was ambitious and rose through the ranks of the church, eventually being named the Bishop of Bountiful, a position which he held for over 20 years. He was so admired by church members that he was considered one of the few contenders who might take control after the death of Rulon Jeffs in 2002. Ultimately, it was Warren Jeffs who would seize control. There are 2 stories about what happened next. Warren says he excommunicated Winston, while Winston claims he left of his own accord. Either way, Winston's departure created a schism in the Canadian branch of the FLDS, with about half of the members choosing to follow Winston, while the others remained faithful to Warren. Winston went on to establish the Church of Jesus Christ Original Doctrine Incorporated. Former members of both polygamist groups described Winston as intelligent, manipulative, and arrogant.
I'm trying to understand polygamy.
Oh, well, okay. Then why do you think that I should be able to make you understand polygamy?
Because you were the bishop for almost 20 years. You were
20 plus.
20
yes.
plus. Well, so I'm asking the right person these sorts of questions.
Oh, you think you are?
Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because I think that it would be there's absolutely no way in the world that I could explain that to you.
While he is known to be more reasonable than Warren Jeffs, he is still a dedicated participant in plural marriage, having amassed a family of at least 27 wives and over 150 children.
I would like my children to stop at grade 10, have an opportunity to go work for a little while, and if they want to go back to school, they'll go back as a mature student who will get something out of high school.
But even grade 10, there are only, 2 or 3 people who have graduated from grade 10.
Some of those wives have left him and the religion, though many others remain by his side and faithfully defend him. Several women recall Winston pressuring them into marriages with men they did not want to marry. He would also take in FLDS members who were being punished by other leaders. This often included disobedient wives or daughters who were refusing to marry the man their father chose. A few months of shunning locked in a room with scripture was typical, though there are even darker stories. I will leave a link to a few books I would recommend if you want to know more about that. Unfortunately for Winston, the Canadian government is not as friendly to plural marriage as the United States. In 2009, the Crown began pursuing polygamy charges against him, though the case was initially thrown out of court. In 2017, they managed to make it stick, and Winston was found guilty of polygamy. While he faced up to 5 years in prison, he ended up only having to serve 6 months of house arrest with all those wives. So yeah, you really showed him, Canada. Winston is certainly not the worst of the worst, but he's not a great guy either. I would say that he fits in right here. In the next and final installment, I will be looking at two men who are probably the most famous Mormon polygamists in modern times. I will be exploring the manipulative rise, reign of terror, and infamous fall of Warren Jeffs, and then I will talk about this golden retriever of a man, and we can decide where he fits in on the tier list. Until then, have a fantastic day or night, and I will catch you next time.